I didn't say I loved them. I just said I didn't mind them because the story was good. That's all I was saying. So you texting?
That was Justin Allen. I didn't text him back. I got a message.
The guy that was following me around with the video camera?
Yeah, he's legit. The David tracking app. What happened with the razor this morning? It looks like you kind of...
I was in a hurry. I told you, I woke up late.
Would you use a bush hog?
You know, I bought these razors. They are the junkiest razors. So it's got a little clip-on head on, right? And I don't know why, every single time I'm on a trip, I go to use it, I'm like, and the little thing breaks off. And then the head won't clip onto the handle. And I got to call or I got to email.
You're trying to hold it and like...
Yeah, so that's what I did. I'm like, okay, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be bleeding. No, it looks fine. 5 minutes later, it's just blood streaming down my face. I'm like, oh, there you go. Great. I love going on trips. This is awesome.
Jason, introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Jason Quillin. I own Top Notch Auto in a little town, Jeanette, Hunton, Ohio. I got 2 buildings side by side, 8 bays altogether, 3 techs right now, including myself, 2 service supervisors.
Nice.
So, yeah, that's us.
The 2 building thing, how does that work out for you?
Sucks.
Yeah.
Are they
Yeah.
right next to each other?
Yeah, across the alley.
Oh, that's not bad.
It just sucks because it's 2 of everything: 2 electric bills, 2 air compressors.
Yeah.
Just
The communication's tough. And you know, in our old shop, the bays were divided, but we're all in the same building.
Mm-hmm.
And so just moving stuff around was a pain in the butt. It made us extremely inefficient.
it is. You know, we had to go buy another torch cart, another welder,
Yeah.
and just 2 transmission jacks. You just
Right.
name it.
Yeah,
So-
I could see that. Is there a reason you had to have the 2 buildings, or is it?
Yeah, so just to back up a little bit, started out independent shops, then went into GM dealer for 10 years.
Okay.
Got kind of tired of the morale, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Everybody's dog eat dog world, right?
Right,
Everybody knows the dealership life. And
For sure.
the morals didn't line up with mine. The culture kind of sank.
Right.
And had the bright idea to start doing a little bit of side work at home because there was the customers I had at the independent shops. When I went to the dealership, I was an hour away, so they
Right.
weren't going to come there.
Yeah.
So I started doing a little moonlighting. Started realizing how bad of service the customers, my good customers that I had worked on before, was getting.
Yeah.
Like parts being thrown at things, just quality of the repair was horrible. So I started doing some select things, just what I wanted to, put a little extra cash in pocket. Then one day woke up, looked at my parking lot, and I had 35 cars sitting in my parking lot
Right.
at home. So thought to my wife, I'm like, okay, we got to do something different here. And she was on board too, because she's like, the day-to-day stress that the dealership puts on a flat rate tech
Yes.
was like,
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my son he was probably 12 at the time.
Okay.
So he was getting into football, doing things, and being where I was at, that was going to cause some problems with logistics. So it was going to work out in our best interest to try to do this.
Yeah.
So I looked at an old dealership building in this town that I'm in. It was a very old building. It's going to need a ton of repair. And for what they wanted for it, I was like, I could build new for that.
Yeah.
And the owner of it is like, well, if you don't want to buy this building, would you want to buy this lot that's across the street that we own? And I looked at it, and it was a 66 by 166 foot lot. And I'm like, there ain't no way that's going to be big enough to
Yeah.
do what I need to do. But I started playing around with some building ideas and stuff, and it's like, we might be able to make this work, right? So we built a 4-bay. It's 96 by 40, basically,
Okay.
building. And that's where we got started at. And when I started, it was great. It was me. I hired an old service advisor I used to have, and my cousin as a receptionist, and a family friend as a lube tech.
Okay.
So I started out with 3 employees right off the rip, which was super stressful.
Yeah.
But we were small enough that we could manage that really easy. It wasn't no craziness throughout the day. Everything was pretty mild.
Yeah.
So for would it be 4 to 5 years, that worked out good.
Yeah.
Then hired a full-time tech, and then another changed service advisors, basically, or service managers. I started parting a little bit away from the technician side, more into the owner side. we just outgrew. Then,
Right.
hired another tech and another tech. And then next thing you know, just we had 4 techs in one shop and it was tight. So we decided, okay, well, had a crazy idea coming out to Vegas and looking at ADAS. So I ended up buying an ADAS machine, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to put it in this other building. I'm going to build this building specifically for ADAS, thinking this is going to be a big thing. Yeah, that was a failure. So,
David, do you
Shut up,
resemble that
Lucas,
remark?
shut up.
yeah. So, and I won't say it's a failure. The failure is other shops aren't trained for it.
Yeah.
And the body shops are so far behind. It's
But then body shops are perfectly fine having some parking lot guy come out in a van and do the calibration.
what I'm finding is most body shops, and I feel bad for them because if you think about what they're tasked to do, the body guys always sanded, painted, put body parts on, right? Straighten. They have their craft. That's great.
Yeah.
Now they're asked to be technicians. Now they're asked to read service information, which they don't even, 90% of them don't even have.
Yeah.
So they're completely clueless when it comes to what needs calibrated.
Yeah, for sure.
I have one body shop that's really good about it. They know, hey, if I mess with this stuff, they call us. We say, give them what we need. They give us a VIN number. We tell them, hey, this is calibrations that require, and they move on. The other body shops, if it don't have a light on, it's down
Ship
the
it.
it's
Yeah.
down the door. Yeah, it's really sad because then it usually ends up back in our shop because after say 30, 40 miles, the camera starts to see the misalignment with the radar and such, and
Right.
then now it needs a calibration, right? It's
Yeah.
like, no, this thing needed a calibration before it left your door, man.
Yeah.
And no matter, however, I've spent time training with them. I've made these little brochures up for them. It's like, hey, call us. We will tell you. Just give us a VIN number when you're writing the estimate. We'll tell you what it needs.
But that means that they're complacent now. If they know, if they say I didn't know,
Right. But there again, they're the last one to touch the car.
yeah,
they're just-
I'm with you.
They're just behind. They don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Truly, it's almost like a check engine light, right? Your car can run bad without a check engine light.
Yeah,
Doesn't say it's fine.
yeah,
So anyhow, so we go back to the ADAS thing. It's doing 2 or 3 a month, maybe if we're lucky. That's not paying for the bills, right?
no.
But I loved it because I had this big open space garage, no racks in it. And I was like, hey, I could do training center here. I could do whatever. Of course, all
Yeah.
that stuff starts going out the window real quick because the bills are still there every day. So,
Yeah.
like, okay, well,
Oh, that sounds so familiar. All of it.
yeah. So sorry. It'd be nice if we could all get together and talk about this all
Yeah,
the
I
time.
was
right?
gonna say,
don't
don't do
mess
this.
up
This is a
this.
bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I got to thinking, I'm like, okay, I need to reevaluate the business a little bit and find out where are we the least efficient at. And one of them
Yeah.
was oil changes. For whatever reason, we was using our alignment bay for oil changes. Well, we was missing so many tie rods, ball joints. We couldn't
Yeah.
shake the suspension down without jacking it up. Well, if you jack it up, now you're another 10, 15 minutes
Yeah.
up and down, all the good stuff, right? And it was an older machine, so the jacks were wore out. It was
a
needing
deal,
replacing.
yeah.
So I'm like, okay, how can I be more efficient and utilize more space? So I'm like, okay, well, if I buy a in-ground alignment hoist, then make it flush mount, I can still do my ADAS in that bay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually, even a little bit better because I know it's level.
yeah,
So that's what we did. We moved the alignment machine over there, and then we still wasn't doing what I wanted to be doing in that building. And I'm like, okay, well, I have an older tech that he's a great guy, but he's better off by himself. So
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, would you like to go?
stuff him over there.
Yeah, absolutely. He does all my big work, so it's nice that he doesn't have the distractions and stuff like that. He's in the middle of a timing job. He's not dealing with people running past him, parts guys asking questions.
Yeah.
He's much more efficient over
Yeah.
by himself. So I got him over there in the building by himself, which I don't like having one person in a building.
Yeah.
Because that causes safety concerns. And
Yeah,
stuff.
for sure. So he falls, something happens, has a heart attack. Who
Right.
knows? Yeah.
So, but at the same time, we hired another young kid. So we needed that base space. So
Yeah.
moved him out of the main garage, put him in the spare garage. Then I had 3 techs in the other 4-bay garage, and that worked out really well. So
Okay.
that's how we ended up with 2 shops or 2 buildings.
So, what about ADOS now? How much are you doing right now? Is it grown at all?
It's slowly growing.
Okay.
It's 2 to 3 a month, maybe, which
Right.
is really, really sad.
Yeah.
I should be doing 2 or 3 a week for the available in my area.
Yeah.
I'm finding out, and I won't throw them under the bus, a lot of the dealerships are just,
Oh yeah.
they might as well not even be doing them.
Yeah, dude. We've ran into that too. Is that they're not calibrating them, or we will send them in for a calibration, and we'll say, hey, this needs to go to the dealer. Like, do a lot of Audi stuff, and so an Audi, if it needs alignment, it needs a calibration. Well, they take it to the dealer, and they're doing it for $179, and it's like either you're not calibrating it, or you're just charging $179 and eating the cost of doing the calibration.
Right.
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I think it was a Volkswagen we just had in. Same gig, we did 4 tires on it. Guy wanted a maintenance alignment. And we're like, hey, this is going to be like a $600 alignment.
Yeah.
And he was okay with it for a day. And we're like, because we couldn't get the calibration done right away.
Right.
And next day he's like, yeah, I'm just going to hold off on that. So I guarantee he called around and somebody's like, oh, yeah, we have the typical alignment shops that'll do them for $59, $69. Tow and goes. And
no clue that they just did something that's a massive liability.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that's a big problem right now that we're dealing with, trying to get that straightened out. So
I don't know how these alignment or these ADAS. We have an ADAS calibration center. Just all they do is ADAS calibrations, and they must be getting everybody shop in town, and they have to be doing them at a deep discount because the dealerships in my area are doing them for $150, $170.
Yeah, we just had a Ford. We did a 360 camera on, and we sublet it because we don't have the mats for the Ford. And I'm not going to go spend $1,300, $1,400 on a set of mats to use them once.
Yeah.
So we contacted the local dealership we buy our parts off of, and they're like, yeah, $75. I'm like,
are you sure?
Yeah. And I made sure they legitimately did it.
Yeah.
My service supervisor took it out there, watched it, waited, and she's like, yeah, he took the time, he measured everything out, laid his mats out.
I don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense.
I talked to a friend of mine who is a service manager at a Chrysler dealer, and he said, we're forced to buy the equipment. And instead of fighting with the client about it, it's easier just to say, sure, here's what we'll do, right? And he said, we'd just rather eat it than fight with them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you something. From working with Chris, my new manager, dude, he was like, I can't believe how nice your clients are. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, they're so nice. Well, we've always taken care of them. We've always made sure that we have a good relationship with them. And he said, man, in the dealership world, he said, I mean, these people are really mean to us. Like, it's a rough deal. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, there's no respect. There's no unilateral respect from them. And the advisors don't respect them back because, they're assholes.
Yeah.
And so it's a downhill slide. And so I think that create and the other thing about the dealership is every single client, he was pointing out, he said, every client that comes through the door is only there to get something for free. And anything that you charge them for, they get upset about. It doesn't matter what it is. And it can be a 20-year-old Honda. And he would say they would still be like, well, but I mean, I know it's out of warranty, but couldn't you do something to help me out here? And it's like, no, I mean, like, you understand when it's out of warranty, it's out of warranty, but they do not see it that way.
No. And I think the reason the rates are cheaper because they're still just charging the door rate. So if the camera calibration calls for 0.8, it's 0.8 at door rate, right?
Yeah.
And it's not taken into consideration. You're not going to have your lube guy do this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because
it's not even that though. It's 0.8 once you have the initial alignment done. So it's an alignment first, or just an alignment check first, and then you can do the 0.8, assuming everything's fine. The minute there's a problem, it stops being a 0.8, and it's 0.8 for that one thing. So radar is not front camera, it's not blind spot, it's all separate.
It's interesting. Subaru's the other one we ran into not too long ago. We had a Subaru, the wheel alignment, it actually come up on our Hunter machine and said, this needs to
do a calibration.
Yeah. So, it's interesting right now. Big change.
Yeah.
I work at a lot of shops. I do a lot of programming for other shops because they won't invest.
Yeah.
They're okay calling me in and charging them whatever I charge them.
Right.
Because they don't have to have that equipment or that guy all the time.
Yeah.
I think that, I got one shop that does a lot of R&Rs. They're just constantly engine transmissions all day long.
Right.
And they're okay. They don't want to invest. They don't they don't want to know this stuff.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
hey, I got 10 years and I'm out.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
he-
And I think that is a mindset that a lot of shop owners have right now.
Oh, 100%. I was looking at the availability on the classes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was one class on retirement,
Yeah.
getting your shop set up right. And it's sold out.
Yeah.
And I showed my service advisor that's here with me. I was like, hey, Chrissy, check this out. Like, this is scary because you look at all these technical classes and there's 60 seats left, 50 seats.
Yeah.
And you look at this one for retirement and there's 0 seats left. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not a good thing.
It says a lot. And
I think that'll be a great thing. Get some of these yahoos out of the business.
yeah, that's a good idea. Well, the problem is that while there may be some of them that are yahoos, I think in some sense there's some really good operators who are tired and they can't find help, and the technology's changing so fast, and they're just like, "Just can't do this."
Yeah,
I'm tired of this.
It's like we're missing a generation. You know,
I agree.
You got those 60 plus years old guys that are just like their equipment's all dilapidated.
Yeah.
They don't want to know the things, right?
Yeah.
And then you got your 30 or 20-year-old kids that think they could do it with little to no experience.
But that middle generation, you're right, is not there in that same sense.
Mm-hmm.
What, you were a technician, started a shop. That's something we talk about a lot. What are the roadblocks that you ran into that you think other people should know about?
Oh boy, it's not easy.
No, it's not.
Probably my hardest one's employees. Trying to find the right employees, trying to make everybody work together. We just had a meeting just last week about that. It's like, I want us to get to a point where we have a team that clicks.
Yeah.
We have good people.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's always somebody that's out of that ring, Back in my dealership days when I first started out there, I once said I would never leave that dealership. I was like, we had a team that was just rock solid.
Right.
Good service advisors, manager, techs, you name it.
Yeah.
Like I had a lube boy, he'd come up to me every day. He's like, dude, I just sold 8 hours of work for you today. He was like thrilled to sell me work, right?
Yeah.
Like that's awesome, yeah. But then, we lost one person out of that mix.
Yeah. And
then
it
all
started
unraveling.
unraveling. Yeah.
So that's definitely probably the hardest thing because when you're a tech turned business owner, we always start out slow and small.
Yeah.
So you can manage one employee, have somebody answer the phone and go. But when you start adding employees, now all of a sudden you're just multiplying all the problems.
Yeah. Well, and that was something that I really learned early on. I wanted to hire a service advisor, and my business coach was like, no way. You have to learn to be a service advisor before you can hire a service advisor. And so I was upset about it. I was frustrated. He's like, look, dude, if you hire a service advisor, you have no systems, you have no processes, you have no policies, and you tell me that you want to do the work, right? You want to be in the shop doing the work. Well, that's great. But you think that hiring this person and putting them at the front desk is going to somehow magically alleviate your problems. All it's going to do is multiply them. It's going to add to them. And you're going to do this, and you're going to be really frustrated, and you're going to fire them, and it's not really going to be their fault. It's going to be your fault.
Oh, 100%. I love talking to my customers. I have no problem with that part of it. But just like every other owner, I don't make any money if I'm doing the repair bills.
Yeah.
Because you get the sympathy for everybody, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You're like, oh, well, yeah, we could do that in a half hour. So let's Mrs. Jones, let's
give
her
tighten up on this a little bit. Sharpen that pencil up.
Yeah, and my service advisors, they kick me out now. They're like, you're going to just screw this all up. Get out of here.
Yeah, I talked to my manager just a minute ago, and we've made jokes about him all week about what he's doing. And I was talking to him. I'm like, what I was thinking is it's a deal where the insurance is going to pay because it was a gas station that had water in the fuel and it trashed his truck, right? And so it's a Duramax, it's like $13,000 job, something like that. And we're going back together with it. And I'm like, here's what I had planned is that we would call insurance, get them to pay what they can. Once they pay us, we'll lower his bill a little bit. And he's like, well, how would we do that? I'm like, well, okay, then the point.
So managing the employee side of it, that's something especially a dealer tech, you don't deal with. You deal with your own, you're in your own world.
Yeah.
Independent world, it's more of a team environment, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's an hourly situation typically, and it's just, we're in the dealership, everybody's out for their own.
Right.
So that was huge for me to try to figure out. And obviously the employees that you hire can make that or break that, right? I hired one kid. I try to hire young people the best I can, because you don't hire bad habits that way.
Yeah, for sure.
You could have a tech that's very experienced, but he's loaded with old ways,
bad habits, and bad attitude, or bad structure, if you will.
Yeah. So anyhow, I hired this one child, or I shouldn't say child, this one gentleman, and he was fresh out of school. He had an awesome resume, right? And then I hired him, and there were just some things that were off on him.
Yeah.
And found out he's a little bit autistic, a little bit. Had a bad life. Mom and dad was drug dealers.
Right.
Grandma and uncle was raising him. And then I found out he got messed to back up with that stuff. He had a couple days he didn't show up, and uncle called me. He's like, "Yeah, we ain't seen him in 4 days." And I'm like, "And you're just now calling me?" Like, it was an extended weekend, and ended up he got into some bad stuff with some people, and ended up in the hospital. But he came back to work, and I sat down with him. I'm like, "All right, tell me what's going on," right? And he started giving me this little story, and Grandma was with him, and Grandma literally was like, "No, tell him what happened," And he got messed up with some meth, and just it spiraled. And I felt bad because I was like, if I let this kid go, it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
He's going to go down that spiral even
For sure.
further. And is it going to be my fault if I read about him on the news?
Yeah.
So I have a really bad habit of holding on people because I want to make them better.
Long been gone.
Yeah. You could ask all my employees. I mean, one of my goals is to make somebody better. I don't care if they stay with me for a month or 3 years, 5 years.
I want them to leave here better than they came here.
Exactly. So I'm like, did I do that job with him? I feel like I failed. And, I'm like, okay, I got apart from him because I can't have those kind of people being around my shop, right?
Yeah.
Next thing you know, stuff's coming up missing, and you don't want none of that. So I'm like, okay, I got to let this kid go. And you could ask my wife. I mean, it was hard. I didn't sleep at night. I typically
Dude,
to that
I'm
point,
telling you, that first one especially, man.
Oh my gosh, right? If somebody comes up to you and wants to quit, it's like, oh, that sucks, right? But you see the writing on the wall, you're kind of prepared for it. But to actually terminate somebody is really, really tough.
Yeah.
And so I laugh about it now, but at the time I was pretty much in tears. I was like, called him up. I'm like, "Hey, Jacob, man," I was like, I just don't think you're going to be the fit for this place. I said, you got some things going on, you need to get straightened out. He's like, "Oh, okay, no worry." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me, man?" I'm like,
I've not slept in 2 nights because I knew I was going to have to do this. And
right.
You don't give a shit.
No, and the kid, I just had to terminate another kid just it was 2 weeks ago. Same gig. He was just going down the wrong pattern. It was so crazy because I hired this kid, and I put him on a 30, 60, 90 grow plan, basically.
Yeah.
He wanted X amount of dollars. I'm like, okay, well, I'll meet you in the middle. I'm going to start you a little lower than what we were talking about. Within 30 days, we'll put you in the middle of where you want to be at. Then if you're still growing on the 90 days, we'll be above that. Yeah. I was like, that's a pretty aggressive plan, right? And so first 30 days, he come in just hammering out, had some online training set up for him. He hammered it out. And I'm like, the kid was really glued on. So I was like, I slipped him a $100 bill one day. I'm like, "Hey, dude, I just appreciate everything that you're doing. Keep up the urge, and gave him the raise and stuff, gave him that cash." That was the last day that he did any training.
Really?
It was the last day he gave a shit about much of anything. He just went straight down the hill. And I'm like, what gives,
Yeah. Did you ask him?
I did. Well, I think it was a girlfriend, honestly. Okay. They were getting kicked. They got kicked out of his grandpa's house, I think it was, and then they got kicked out of her grandpa's house. And I don't know what the situation was. I bought him a toolbox. I started an apprentice program with him. So if he had worked with me for 2 years, he got the tools and toolbox. Like, through the world of this kid, right? Yeah. And they don't look at it that way. They look at it as a job. And the day that I terminated him, he's like, "Well, I kind of felt that this was coming, so I talked to my girlfriend. She got me a job at Taco Bell." And
oh my God!
I'm like, "Okay, well, you're definitely weren't a fit then," because he had no future plans,
no
to
ambition,
do better.
no drive, no.
Right. There's a kid that comes to my. I have training events at my shop every now and then.
Yeah.
And I got a kid that comes there, and he's from a good friend of mine's shop, and this kid is just constantly like, "Hey, what class is next? What." That kid's going to do great. Yeah. He wants to do
that hunger, that drive, that I want to do something with this.
Yeah. So it's tough whenever because like that, I failed that kid. I feel like I didn't make you want your job. I didn't make you want to stay in the industry.
I've got some like that I look back and I think that I took the wrong path with and I didn't handle the right way. And I mean, unfortunately, that is being in business.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to get it right all the time.
Right.
And you're human and you make these mistakes. And especially as a technician turned owner, somebody that does not know how to run the business, and starting out, we're not natural born leaders, right? There's some natural born leaders, but they're pretty rare, right?
Sure.
And so you have to learn this skill set. And, we talk about that technicians don't necessarily have the skill set of business ownership coming into it. But if you don't get it, right, you're putting yourself in jeopardy if you're not careful.
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah. It's that, like I said, the employee side of it is by far the hardest, trying to, make sure you don't favor one employee more than the other.
Yeah, dude.
There's a lot that goes into it, but
yeah,
I have one tech that works for me that I'm super proud about. I say I rescued him from a quick lane. So he worked for a Ford quick lane.
Okay.
And his buddy worked for me, and we kind of went back and forth a little bit talking about it. And I'm like, I'm not going to hire I don't need another lube guy.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking that's what the quick lane did. Then I found out that, hey, they do brakes, they do oil changes, tune-ups, they do all the things, right? And I'm like, okay, well, we'll make a risk and try to add another person.
Yeah.
And then he went through he got a good experience of how the dealership life works because he wanted into the shop. And the quick lane's like, no, they make money there. So they're like, yeah, we'll put you in the shop, but we're going to keep you in the quick lane for a little bit more. And the days never came.
Right.
We kept talking back and forth, and finally got him to come to work for me. And it's been a godsend. I mean, the kid's almost doubled his pay now.
Wow.
I know some people have different views, but the ASEs thing, to me is like a self-worth thing more than it's not.
I can see that for sure. I won't disagree with that.
Yeah, and that's how I look at it. It's not saying that you could do this particular skill. It's not a credential, right?
Yeah.
But to me, it's a self-worth. It builds you up. Hey, look, I made this roadblock. I'm going to go for another roadblock.
I just wish, my only beef with them is that I wish they would take some of the money that they have and market this to the American consumers, right?
100%.
I think if they would do that, it would create more relevance for that certification, and it would. I really think that they could kill two birds with one stone. I believe that they could genuinely create an environment or a situation where the technicians feel like this is a career, right? They feel esteemed because of this. I don't know if you've seen it. Dave Mackles is coming out with a similar credentialing program that does a verification of your skills, right? It doesn't just say, can you pass a test? It actually makes you verify your skills in one way or another. And so I think there's a lot of cool things that could happen. I think if ASE would just come out and say, look, we're going to invest 2% of our annual budget in marketing, right? Like that would be a huge deal.
Yeah.
Just 2%, right? And they're focusing on the certification programs in community colleges and in high schools. Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, that's not even what are you going to do with that? It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. No,
right?
I'm involved a little bit with the local vocation school.
Yeah.
And all the kids come out of there with student ASCs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I'm not going to.
No. I teach the adult program, and they started this program to where if you don't have a high school diploma, you could do an adult diploma program. So if you pass 3 student ASC tests, the state will pay for the test, and then you get your diploma. There's people in there, I didn't find this out until after I signed up to be the instructor there, that most of the time the students, say if I had 10 students, probably 8 of them were just there for a diploma. They are not. They are not going to move on to working on cars.
Right, they're not even technicians. Just taking the ASC test. So they don't have to.
Yeah, to me, I was so mad when I first found this out because I was like, "What am I? I'm wasting my time here." Yeah, I'm getting compensated for it, but it's like.
But better than that is you have people who are not automotive technicians passing the automotive credentialing that we use.
They legitimately can walk into an auto repair shop with a resume and say, "Hey, I got an ASC in brakes, electrical, and steering suspension." Right now, they are a student, but a lot of people don't understand the difference between the student ASC and the regular ASC.
What is the difference?
the student ASC test is a lot less questions,
Yeah.
and it's a lot easier. So from what I understand, I've never taken a student one, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I also know that my students that's passed it,
Yeah.
if they've passed it, it's got to be easy. Sorry, it's just what it is.
Yeah.
To where like your adult ASCs or technician ASCs, I guess you could
Yeah.
call it. You get into your more advanced level ones.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot more questions, a lot harder questions.
Right.
So I think there is some fidelity there
Yeah.
to a point, but it just sucks when you see people that aren't using it to.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, so most of the high schools now, they forklift certify all these kids.
Right.
And they come to me and they're so proud about it. And it's
Right.
like, okay, great, go jump on my 1950s Clark out back.
I know, right?
They can't
And
run
see-
it. you
Yeah,
know?
dude. Yeah, for
It's
real.
like, wait a minute, what's this? This only has one lever and it moves 2 inches up and down. What's going on with this thing, you know?
I have an uncle who drove a truck, and we always laughed at the new forklift drivers in like many of the produce warehouses.
Right.
And like you go in merchant distributors, and when you go down there and you look at those boys that have been running those forklifts for years, because I mean, like, dude, they're running by you at full speed, and they have like built forklifts, right? These things run like 40 mile an hour, and he's coming by you with a pallet, and he's just like zooming by.
yeah.
And so they have a pattern set up. And so old boy will go on the truck, and as he's backing out, the other forklifts coming in behind him, and he's running in the truck. And I mean, they're just going in and out nonstop. And so they would hire these new kids, and they would have just got their forklift certifications, and they would put them on a forklift, and you could see them shake,
yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I
2
don't know if
mile
I
an
can
hour.
do this, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, and that's what sucks about certifications, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I think we need to understand that there's got to be a difference between credentialing and
Yeah.
certifications, because
Right.
it's just, I know the high school kids in the vacation school, they got a credential, and,
Yeah.
and the school gets X amount of dollars from the state for every credential
Yeah.
kid. But like our vacation school's broke. We got 29 students to one teacher in our junior class.
Holy cow.
Imagine taking your shop,
Yeah.
hiring 29 high school kids and saying,
Yeah.
hey, go to work, you know, and try to organize that.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
No.
So I'm working with them, trying to get them to lower that number, but they're just looking at it as the dollar figures coming in the door.
And you know, that was one of the things that a good friend of mine is one of the college instructors, and he said, I've been so burnt out for so long because the focus is not teaching the kids. The focus is the money. The focus is meeting these requirements so they're happy about it. And he said, it's not serving anybody. It's serving the school, and the school's getting money, but like that's the extent of it. And when we educate based on financial gain, like that's not really education anymore.
No.
I mean, you might be teaching them something, but the focus was never to teach them. The focus was to, hey, here's how we get paid, right?
Right.
And that when you shift into that mindset, you know, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I asked the instructor, I said, okay, you got 29 students. At the end of the year, how many of them are employable?
Yeah.
You know, how many of them can come to my shop and go to work?
Yeah.
Maybe 2. I'm
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah, dude.
why? You know, they don't qualify them to come in.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so bad. You know,
Yeah.
I talked to another vacation school teacher through a 20 group, and this guy's got it figured out because they allow, I think it's 15 students. I believe 2 of them has to be special needs for funding.
Holy shit.
Yeah, right. But they got lucky and they was able to obtain a former repair shop. They was stuck in a small little like wood shop in the school,
Yeah.
and then they shop had built a new one down the road and sold that one, their old one, to the school. So they got a functioning shop. They have a lobby. They have a parts room.
Oh,
they-
that's cool.
yeah. And so this guy figured out, like he had a technician, I shouldn't say technician yet, student that really knew his cars, but he hated to get it dirty. He did not want to get grease on his hands.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, well, you're going to run the desk. I'm going to have you do service writing. You know,
Right.
I'll figure that out. He had an autistic child that would spend hours in front of the bolt bin just organizing bolts.
Yeah.
He ended up getting that kid employed at a maintenance garage in a fleet situation. He couldn't be in the public,
Right.
but he could be in a set every day, same people.
Yeah.
He could be in that environment. I mean, that's pretty huge.
Yeah, for sure.
And then they had the patience to deal with that. So it was really cool to hear that guy's
Yeah.
plan.
Build a system around it.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that our local one is the opposite. They're just looking for the money.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think that there's a lot of that, though. And I think that the system is semi-broken. when we get to that point that the focus is really about this is how the school earns enough to survive. And the other thing that I've seen is they become very gluttonous, right? I don't want to call it greedy. I don't think it's intentionally greedy. But what do? When you just continually give them money. My brother works for the water department, and he was talking about how when he came on, there were so many people that had ran this water department before. And the deal is you have to use up all your budget or they're going to cut it next year. But if you use up all of it and you request a little bit more, they'll give you more next year. And he said, so there's never any reduction of waste. There's never, the whole concept is we have to spend more money. I was talking to Roy, and Roy said, hey, go upstairs into the school and get you a couple cases of PB Blaster. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, 10 years ago before I started, the man who was running the school didn't want him to cut his budget, so he bought 4 pallets of PB Blaster. And we don't use PB Blaster. Can somebody haul this out of here? I've asked for permission. You can have it. I just need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right? And it's that concept that I have a problem with, right? Because now the school becomes gluttonous. It becomes, like I said, not greedy, but it becomes overinflated. And then we're not being lean with what we're doing. We're not being effective. The whole focus is the dollar bill. I think they lose sight. I really do.
100%. I mean, that system's definitely broken. Because I remember back whenever I was getting into the vocational school, I couldn't get into the auto mechanics because it was limited on students, right?
Yeah.
And then you had to, I think there was a short little test you had to do.
Yeah.
I ended up in the body shop. So it was like not really the path I wanted, but I had to do an alternate. Now they have it to where you could actually double lab too.
Oh, really?
So it's giving the kids all kinds of options. You could either say, you might want to be a welder, but maybe be an auto technician. So you could flirt with that and do both of them. As long as your grades are good, you could run both of them as a senior. So, which is really cool in a way. But there again, I tried to get them to change the program around a little bit. I'm like, okay. I said, what? We got 29 students. I said, surely you got to have at least, say, 5 or 6 of them that want to be here, that want to learn this stuff. I said,
genuinely, not just placed here so they don't fail school.
Sure. So I was like, okay, let's change this up a little bit. What if you took those students and put them in like an honors, right? Our homeschools have honors programs. I said, so maybe every Friday, this kid gets to go to the Chevy dealership, and this guy gets to go to this independent shop, and let them float around because some of us may be really good at European cars. So you put them in an Audi shop, maybe they love it.
Right.
You find that niche for them. And they're like, oh, no, we can't do that. That's discrimination and all this stuff. And I'm like, that is so crap.
Right. We're so worried about offending people that we screw them for the rest of their lives. So that sounds like a plan.
Yeah, it screws the good kids because the kids are just there to throw bolts at each other all day long.
Right. And there's no sense in even trying, right?
No. So I get pretty upset when it comes to the high school kid training side of it.
I've often thought that maybe what we need to be working on in vocational schools, what we need to be working on, especially in the high school side of things, is what if we brought EPROM and what if we brought programming and we brought those things as major class topics, right? And not even call it automotive, but say, hey, look, this is some of the stuff that you could potentially go into. We want to show you how to do this. We want to teach you how to do this. What that would do is that would intrigue them and it would get them excited about something. And then we can begin to talk about coding and we can talk about the pathway, the thought process of how the computer thinks and why does it do what it does and how does it do what it does, right? And if we could do that and get them excited about it, we could get them excited about automotive as a whole, right? Yeah. It would also teach the guidance counselors and it would teach the other teachers within the school, hey, listen, this is not, I know this is an automotive class, but this is not easy. Mm-hmm. This is harder than what every other class in this school is. There's no other vocational class that's this complex. You need to be careful about who you put in here, right?
Yeah, 100%. They need to look at, okay, think of it, what if you took your automotive students and spent a week down in the HVAC department, right?
Yeah.
Hey, let's look at how heat pumps work because they're going to be doing
that's
that.
That's going
right?
to be the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, dude, Thomas Leck's stuff, you go watch some of his stuff on AC. Not only am I going to be poor, thanks, Thomas, but he's very smart, but it is very intriguing stuff.
Oh, 100%. I started following that a little bit, and it's like he pisses you off because he's telling you everything you're doing is wrong.
Yeah, I know,
But
right?
that's all we know automotive, right?
Yeah.
And he knows the whole realm of it, which
Yeah.
is unbelievable. There's things that he says and shows you that you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm an idiot, you know?
For sure. And like one of the things that he and I have talked about is he's like, hey, my big concern is that you guys are not ready for when this heat pump switch comes and the new refrigerants come. Like, y'all are going to be lost. You're going to be calling a guy like me to come in and fix the cars because you're not going to be able to fix the systems, because while your conventional automotive system is somewhat forgiving, these are not.
Right.
Like, it's
What?
not an
Heat-
option.
What are you talking about? Heat pumps?
They're starting to run heat pumps in new cars, and like especially EVs and stuff like that. They're running a heat pump system instead of conventional compressors.
So it's not like the exhaust heaters that they used
No,
in
no,
like
no,
the early 2010s.
No, it's just like the heat pump at your house.
Yeah, essentially they could run their system reverse. So
Yeah.
they make your evaporator now the condenser and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yeah,
So they can rob some heat out.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's
What
efficient.
new refrigerant?
there's like 3 new refrigerants coming. Some of the German cars are already running the newest one.
Here's what's going to happen, dear. They're going to defund the EPA.
I would love that.
They're not. It's not even going to be a thing. Maybe it
never
was
an
yesterday, but today, I'm less
He had
worried
to go
about
there.
it. I'm
Diesel
just saying,
guys,
I'm just worried
diesel guys
about
would be loving it if that ever happened, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's so like that. Okay, well, what if you had a car nut kid that was an HVAC?
Yeah,
He may now see an avenue that might work for him
yeah,
because it may turn into a specialized situation where
Yeah.
You got mobile diagnostic guys, but like Tom,
yeah.
you turn into a mobile HVAC guy too.
Right.
So
He's in San Francisco.
Yeah, right.
You cannot duplicate that anywhere else. Maybe.
Dude, have you watched any videos about HVAC work? Have you watched any like commercial HVAC, for instance? I mean,
I couldn't find anything more boring than having to watch commercial HVAC anything.
dude, I love it. I can't help it. I sit
It's
down and watch
so
it. It's
weird.
like they're like the guys working on refrigeration coolers and stuff, like the ammonia circuits. Dude, it's so cool.
yeah, I didn't
Why?
even know
What
those
makes it
existed.
cool?
So
See, I didn't even know they existed either. Hey, my AC doesn't work. You call that 1-800 number, some guy shows up, he overcharges you. I assume, I don't know. It's a lot of money. And then it works again.
I just
And that's it.
I have this issue with having to know how things work. And then once I know how they work, they seem really cool and probably cooler than they actually
depends
are.
on what it is. It depends on what it is. Here's the problem with your EPROM thing is that makes the assumption that there are a lot of kids in the computer language class or computer science class or whatever equivalent there is. A whole bunch of kids are trying to learn coding and maybe some circuit board work. And that's not the case. They don't have anybody in those classes either. Why? Maybe there are some. Those kids are getting fast-tracked, and they're getting put into mathematics classes, and then they're getting shipped off to
4-year schools.
for four-year schools, yeah. And there isn't going to be any intermingling. There just isn't. Hey, do you want to make less money fixing circuit boards and doing EPROM work than you would coding for Twitter or whatever, Google? The only thing that will fix that is that Google fires most of their employees.
That might happen.
There was already a wave a few
Yeah.
years ago. Facebook cut half their staff.
Did you see that recently? There was a shop coach, and they were posting like all the companies that had cut like massive numbers of employees.
Yeah.
And so I think it was like Google had cut 15,000, and like there's a lot of people getting cut right now.
Well, they were living a little high on the hog.
A little fat.
Yeah.
A little fat.
Everybody was running fat pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Then they leaned out, lost a bunch of money. Then the inflation went nuts. Prices jacked up. They didn't hire anybody back. They just ran lean.
Yeah.
Who has better service now than they did pre-COVID? Nobody did. Everybody's understaffed. Everybody's understaffed.
Yeah.
You just blame COVID. Hey, we don't have any staff.
no,
It's
it's
COVID.
100%
Yeah.
an easy
Whole lot
excuse,
easier.
right?
Yeah.
But no,
It is now. They have fatter profits. You can see their bottom lines are bigger than they were before. Everyone's like, hey, you're price gouging. That's not price gouging, dear. They're charging market value. They're just not running the same amount of staff.
but
Far fewer people.
where we got it rough though is like that. We got to study what Tom's teaching, right? So
Yeah.
we got to now become HVAC techs. We got to do our, we got to be IT guys now. All of a sudden, we're doing programming, and some of us are dipping into coding and cloning and all that kind of stuff. It's just the amount of specialization that is expected out of today's technicians, and for the
They're not doing it though. They're not doing it.
What do you
They're
mean?
throwing parts at it. They're not doing it. These yahoos aren't doing. Yeah, I'm calling you techs out. Not a single one. Okay, maybe just a few. There's a few of them doing. 99% are just chucking parts at the car. That's it. They're not doing the IT work, and they don't know how to do EEPROM work, and they can barely program a flipping car. They can't even hit the buttons. They can't follow the prompts on the screen. They don't do any of that garbage. They don't diagnose the car. They don't do any tests. They don't know how to work a lab scope. What are they doing? Brake jobs. Yeah, nah. Look, you get the kid interested in EEPROM work, you're like, hey, and he's like, oh, this is cool, and I can manipulate this, and I can turn this on and off. That program that the guy from Dorman showed us,
Yeah.
he shows us this program. He's got it hooked up to this car, and as the communication is happening across the modules, you can see the information changing on the screen because it's like manipulating it live.
Yeah.
And so
in other words,
turn,
like the communications, what it does is it's like a network spy. And so as he turns on, let's say he turns on a turn signal. Well, he's got a camera recording the screen, or you can screen record. And so you turn on the turn signal, and every time you turn on the turn signal, this bit switches. And so you can pinpoint which communication in the protocol
Isn't that
was
cool?
for that.
You can actually read
Yeah,
the
so
message.
you can
read the messages on everything.
It's reverse engineering the communications. So you can dig into the network and you can figure out, when do I have that message, and now I can watch that message. I can see what that message looks like. I can time that message, and I know what changes, and I can see where it affects the code, and I can see what I can change and what I can make different. So they reverse engineer the module.
Right.
And you can buy that now. You can get that software right now. It's $1,500. That's all it is. And then you have a tech in your shop that's like obsessed with this stuff. You can get in there. But here's the thing. You get a guy that's into that stuff, and they're sitting there, click. And you're like, hey, go do that water pump on that Ford.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? That nasty, sticky Ford.
Yeah.
Go get coolant all over your back. You can click all you want, but also go do this water pump because that pays the bills.
Well, but I mean, I think that, if current auto manufacturers had their way, we'd be working on a very different vehicle in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now. It'd be a very different automobile than what we're working on right now. There's going to be less of the water pump work. Now, with the current trend, do I think that that's going to actually happen? Well, I mean, if everything switches to EV, right?
Everything's not going to switch to EV.
I know,
We already had that
that's what I
discussion.
was saying.
Everything's not switching to EV. They cannot produce enough cobalt. They don't have enough children in Congo to go send down those mines to dig up the cobalt to put into these stupid batteries. They don't have enough. They don't have enough lithium. They don't have enough cobalt. They don't have enough precious metals. If every car was being produced 100% EV, they don't have enough precious materials. They don't.
I thought it was really interesting. I was talking to the guide at Hoover Dam when we went on the tour the other day, and he said the biggest threat to the U.S. people right now is the same threat that other countries that have lithium have faced. I said, what do you mean? He said the Bureau of Reclamation will spend $50 million this year going back and trying to petition to fight them from being able to mine lithium north of the Colorado River system. And he said if they mine it 2,000 miles away even, because what they do is they force a chemical down into the ground, and they extract the lithium with that chemical.
Yeah.
He said it gets into the groundwater, and he said it's like gasoline because it spreads very, very easily. And he said so it goes everywhere, right? You can't get rid of it. And he said it will make it into the water system. And the percentages of the chemical that they use that can be in the water system without being carcinogenic are so low that you would never get the water system back to a safe level. And I thought that is so crazy to think about.
That's why we've outsourced all our lithium mining to China, because they
don't care.
They don't care. You know what? They'll come up with a better system. It's like fracking. That was the issue with fracking. They said because it's essentially the same process. Dump a bunch of water into the thing, it throws everything up, they suck it out. Okay. And they're like, it's contaminating the groundwater.
Yeah.
You saw it a few years ago. This is probably like 10 years ago. You saw the people turning the the
And
sink
lighting it on
letting
fire.
it on fire or whatever. But they've cleaned that up quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to extract every little bit. It's like gold. Have you ever seen a gold mine?
Mm-hmm.
If you go out to Colorado, you can see like legit live gold mines. And they extract every ounce of gold that they can out of. And they are doing it in a very systematic fashion where they are digging everything up, putting it in the thing, and all the races up. They suck every little bit. They don't leave anything behind. And that'll eventually get to that with lithium. If somebody other than China is doing it, China's going to do it the fastest, cheapest, the easiest way. And they don't care about the environment.
I bet you don't give a fuck.
Anyway, you need to worry about an EMP attack. That's what you need to worry about.
Now we've really done it.
Now we open up that one, right?
I'm just saying. Not worrying about lithium.
No, it is sad though,
contaminating
because
or
if somebody loses their cell phone, they lose their mind, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if you took power and electric from
Hey,
them,
man,
or internet from them.
That
take
was
everything away.
That
Shut it
was
all
the
down.
biggest wake up call from Helene is that we are so connected, and people were physically and mentally unwell because they were completely 100% disconnected. Right now, the ones that fared well are the folks who weren't like connected. There were 70 and 80-year-old people that said, well, I'll just fire up the wood stove and I'll kick me some dinner, and I don't watch the TV anyway, and
Right.
I don't have a cell phone, so I don't really need to talk to anybody. I'll kill one of the chickens.
That's what I saw. The country folk, they truly can survive, right? They know how to live. They'll go shoot a deer off the hillside or whatever, right?
It'll be what it'll be.
It's the city people that are just going to lose their mind when they can't go down to the restaurant and get something to eat.
There was a post talking about exactly that, and it was all of these people who live up there, and they started going back and like building the roads back, and they're like, everybody else, if this happened in a metro, they would be waiting on the federal government to come solve this problem. And the problem with that is, and this is, boys, they're smart, right? Those old country boys, they outsmarted all of them. You go in and you build the bridge and you build the road back and you fix it and you get it all nice, neat, looking good. And if you do it before they show up,
You're good.
right?
Yeah.
Because what are they going to do? Are they going to come back and say, no, that doesn't meet code. You need to tear it back out. No, hell no.
Yeah.
They ain't going to get shot.
Yeah.
You know?
Just as long as 20 years from now, we don't have bridges floating down the street again. But there again, they got infrastructure back.
Yeah. Well, they got infrastructure back, but these old boys, they eliminated the waste in the process. And what I mean by that is there's so much waste in the bureaucratic and building permit and engineering, all of those things. I'm not saying that engineers aren't needed, right?
Right.
I'm just saying that you can streamline some of these processes. I thought it was so cool. One of my really good clients is an engineer for Blue Ridge Electric. And he was telling me like the things that they had to begin to re-engineer and rethink. And he said, like, we're expediting this. We're not sending it out for drawings. We're not sending it out for approvals. We're going back to old school. These are the calculations. You should be good. Roll with it, right? Because we engineer a level of failure into that, and we try and get some redundancy, and we talk about these things. And he was telling me, he said, those big power poles, the metal poles, he said, they have 30, he said they call them tension lines, and he said the reason being is, he said they have 30,000 pounds of tension pulling against them. And he said, when you see them sag, he said the pressure's not lower on them because of that. He said that's the temperature. He said there's a steel core and aluminum wrapped around the steel core. And he said when it gets hot, the wires sag. And he said so it's trying to pull that pole in either direction. He said there's weight pushing down on it, but there's not a lot of weight. He said what caused our problem was, he said you lose 2 poles. Because all of a sudden now the whole thing is it's like a chain that has to be put together.
All the way down.
Tug of war.
Yeah.
And he said there was something like 1 million miles of power lines put back up in 4 days. I mean, that's unbelievable. And he said the reason being is, he said, we got the federal government, we got the state government the hell out of our way and just did it.
Got the job done.
That's it.
Look, you can say, well, we have better standards now, yada, yada. You can say all that, but at the end of the day, the Brooklyn Bridge is still standing, and it was built in the 1800s.
Yeah.
It didn't have any of that nonsense.
Yep.
It's still there. The Eads Bridge in St. Louis, it's still there.
Yep. And some of the new ones have fallen.
And the new ones that were built in the 60s and 70s fell.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. We have engineered ourselves into a damn
No,
nightmare.
we've given bureaucrats jobs. That's what we've done.
Yes, I agree with you. You won't even hear me argue about that.
And I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to fix your school thing. Like, what do you do if all of your focus is like, I don't want to lose my budget,
And
there's no incentivization to cut back on the excess, and they just want that extra money to hire more administration.
I've noticed something about this, okay? Because I've had some involvement with some of the schools, and I've had some involvement with local politicians and whatnot. The problem is if you say things like this to them, they look at you like you're crazy because they absolutely do not want that to happen, right? They won't give you a voice if you stand in opposition to anything that we currently do because they're like, oh, he's just a little irrational. He doesn't understand what we had to do to accomplish this. No, and he doesn't understand that you got paid a bunch of extra money to do a bunch of jack shit.
Yeah. No, we already had that conversation. It was interesting. The last board meeting we had, me and another gentleman that teaches was standing outside for over an hour, and one of the administrators come out and it's like, is everything okay out there? Or like, we're just trying to figure out why your plan is so screwed up. It's
exactly.
like, he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I was just told you had 29 students in your class and only 2 of them were hireable.
Yeah.
That is a failure. That's a huge failure.
Absolutely. But you know what? That administrator will look at you and will say, well, he's the one who's wrong, right? Even though the statistics and the just rational thought says you're not, they'll look at that and say, well, did you hear the language he used? It wasn't as polished and proper as we expect, right? And they'll use that and they'll say, that's why we shouldn't listen to him. I've seen it.
Sure.
I've seen it. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely crazy. They have no interest in listening to people like that. Well, I mean, I can understand why they wouldn't listen to David.
Listen, they passed a school bond in our area a few years ago. It was right after COVID. And the whole point of it was to dump a bunch of money into the local schools. And the result was 20, 30, 40% raises for the school administrators and hiring more administrators. That's it.
Yeah.
It didn't do anything else for anybody else.
And look, if you've had any meetings with these people, I know you've been in them. If you've had any meetings with these people, it is wholly 100%. Oh, look at these troublemakers behind you. You got to blow him a kiss.
No kisses.
No kisses?
Mm-mm.
He's not going to blow you a kiss.
Sorry.
Yeah, it is David's younger brother.
Yeah, right?
But they are not under any circumstances interested in solving this problem.
No, I was really upset whenever I found it. Once I started to really look into the problem.
Yeah.
And like they pushed the credentialing so hard.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're not worried about the kids. You really truly aren't. Matt, that works for me. The kid I was telling you about, the quick lane.
Yeah.
He was, to my knowledge, he's the only one in his class, his graduating class, that is in the field.
Yeah.
Everybody else has moved on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a failure.
Dude, that's been a long
time.
time. When I went through tech school, there were 2 kids in my class that were hireable. I was not one of them. There were 2 kids that were in the class that made it to be actual technicians. Everybody else was like, they wanted to go do something in the automotive field, but it wasn't as technicians. And everybody knew that guy doesn't know how to do alignments. Can't read service information.
It is a broken system.
So what's I guess what we got to figure out is, why do people not stay in? Is it money? Is it the struggle of needing to know so much?
I think it is a combination. I think there's lots of things that go into it. I think it's hard, right? Let's be real. It's hard. It's hard work. It's greasy. It's dirty. It's hot. It is uncomfortable at times. It's hard on your body. It is demanding. And many shop owners, we have no choice, right? My personal belief is over the years we've backed ourselves into this corner, that instead of raising our rates like we should have, because this is very complex work, it's very hard work, we should have been charging substantially more, so we could have paid substantially more, and so we could have been profitable without having to pinch every single second of their day. And had we done those things, then it would be a little more feasible, because the consumer would be used to this by now. we'd kept up with inflation, we'd kept up with the market, and driven it up at the same time, we'd probably be in a lot better shape. But the reality is that's not where we're at. We backed ourselves into a corner.
We should be charging plumber rates.
Yeah. Yeah, 500,
I don't see
600
plumbers
bucks an hour.
running. Plumbers are essentially on flat rate too, but you don't see them running at 1,000 miles an hour and
No.
like they have to account for every minute every day
Right.
because they're going to lose out. You don't see that.
But what's broken? You know, it's the customers don't want to pay us. They don't.
Yeah.
Their thought process of what it should cost to do a brake job, or say a check engine light, right?
Well, you hire a plumber once, twice, 3 times in your life, right?
Right.
To plumb a house. You might have one out to fix a problem. You hire an electrician. You know, my electrician worked for 1 month and charged me $150,000 to wire the shop, not counting materials, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, come on now.
That's
One
a
month.
lot.
So I had a younger kid working for me. My wife babysitting when he was a baby. I mean,
Yeah.
we knew this kid. We hired him on as a cleanup kid. Started doing odd jobs. He could do a little bit. I mean, he was so funny because he's a farm kid. And you could ask him to go do his spark plugs on a V6. Next thing you know, you see his shoes hanging out from underneath of it because he's underneath the car trying to do spark plugs. It's like, we have a hoist, man, you know?
Right.
But he was just that kid.
Yeah.
But he recently just left us to go work for an electrical company, right?
Yeah.
$42 an hour as an apprentice. It's like, it's industrial, right? So
Yeah.
nobody ever worries. But I have a lot of customers that work in those industries. And if you was to charge the rate that they do, they would lose their flipping mind, you know?
Yeah, dude. They unravel over it.
Yeah, I had one gentleman. I have a local company. I'm not going to call them out, but there's a local manufacturing company that's just gobbling up employees because they're starting high school kids at like $27 an hour, right?
Right.
Doing nothing. They don't have
Yeah.
to think. They just have to do the job,
Yeah.
pushing things around, right? So anyhow, how do I want to say this without really calling them out? I had one of those customers come in that worked there, and we charged him. He had a Dodge truck, and he tried to do his own oil change, and somebody told him to use a screwdriver to get the oil filter off, right? Well, it was a Dodge that has the coolant lines that wrap around the engine up over the,
man.
right? Yeah, so he punched a hole right through the coolant line. Obviously, all that has to come down to get the coolant lines
Yeah.
out. So it was like $800 some, right? And he's like, "Oh my gosh, maybe I should just become a mechanic for what you guys charge." I'm like, whoa, slow your roll here a minute, you know?
Right.
I'm like, okay. I said, I know where you work. I know what you make. I was like, I know your product. If you guys have an RMA product, I know what you guys can sell it for.
Yeah.
And I said, what's the retail of that product? And it was, you could buy a damaged product for like, say, $250.
Yeah.
But an out-the-door price is, say, $5,000, right?
Right.
I'm like, so what's you guys' labor rate? He goes, what do you mean? I said, what's your labor rate? If you're only charging $250, that's the employee cost.
Right.
That's what it probably costs to make that product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you look at
Yeah.
the one for $5,000, $6,000.
Yeah, I'm like, you don't
Yeah.
see a problem for the company that everybody will work for a company that charges like that, but yet they don't expect to pay.
Other people.
Yeah.
I think that financial mismanagement leads to a lot of that.
Yeah.
I think that that consumers right now are not smart with their money, and they live on a day-to-day basis. They live paycheck to paycheck, so they're not smart enough. And so when it comes down and, this big thing happened and I owe these people money and nobody else is going to pay for it for me, the only option is this is too expensive.
Right.
Right? And when we built the shop, it was like, well, that fucking sucks, but too bad. Nobody's coming to save me. I don't have a choice. Like, I just have to do this, right? And so, I don't know, man. I think that society today is not teaching them that.
No.
I don't think we're teaching them in school. Hey, you have to be smart with your money.
Right.
You have to save money. You have to. You don't just go get a bunch of credit cards, right? They don't understand cash flow.
I don't know that they need to learn all that, but they need to at least understand put into perspective the investment of owning a vehicle.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be the same as a TV or a coffee maker.
Yeah.
We're like, that's broken. How much is it? $35? No, just go get another one. It's like, okay, do that with your $70,000 vehicle.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Right.
work.
Well, I think that's one thing where they struggle too, is they're not educated when they buy these vehicles. They don't understand
Oh,
what they're
they have
actually
no
buying,
idea.
right?
Yeah.
And they still think it's the vehicle they had their grandpa had.
Yeah.
You know, we replace a battery in a car, you got to do battery resets now, right?
Yeah.
You know, I know of lots of shops that don't do that.
Yeah.
It's because they don't read the information, right? But the customer flips their mind whenever you say, hey, you know, okay, it's going to cost X amount of dollars to do this battery because we have to do all these different resets.
Right.
And they don't understand. And then you end up spending a half an hour with them to educate them, right?
Yeah.
And so is it easier just not to charge them for that, or is it easier to spend a half hour educating them?
Yeah.
And then they're going to go home and talk to the guy that works at the factory beside them and be like, oh, they're just blowing smoke up your butt, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So-
And but the problem is we keep rolling over on that, and so we just keep making it worse,
True.
right?
Yeah.
And so we can't roll over on it. We got to find a balance somewhere.
Yeah.
You got to.
It's interesting.